looks like most of you guys came back. That's always a good sign. We've got a few minutes before we get started. Everyone for this session should have their resolution secrets for EIV discrepancies. That should be the handout that they get printed for this session. Okay. Show a little bit of an echo. Shannon, I think it might be your line that's creating that echo. I'm going to mute you. So raise your hand if you want to chat, or if you have the ability, Shannon, of switching over to a landline, that'll prevent that echo. Okay, I show it straight up 12 o'clock. I know you guys have other things to do at your property today, so I want to get this session started and on time so that we can end on time. Hopefully everybody got a little bit of a break for lunch and had something to eat and cleared your brain just a little bit, because this is a tougher session that we have this afternoon. When I planned this webinar series with you all, I wanted to have the second session be a fundamental exposure to income discrepancies. And then it is very deliberate that we are letting some time pass before we have the third and final EIV session. Can't remember what date it's scheduled for, but we wanted that time lapse to occur so that you could have some time to practice the methodology that I'm going to teach you today, because the final session has some more difficult income discrepancies that we're going to try and tackle in case study format. So this particular session is, again, a longer interactive exercise that we're going to go through. There's some fundamental concepts that I'm going to teach you at the beginning of the session, and then I'm going to show you how to apply it in a real-world case study. I will warn you, there are probably some points in this webinar where you're going to feel like I'm losing you, and I want you to not give up, and I don't want you to get frustrated or throw your hands up and say, okay, I'm going to check out because I don't know what she's talking about. It's all going to come back together for you during the case study, and I want everyone to have kind of that aha moment where they leave the webinar session with the skill set that they need to resolve these discrepancies, because I know you guys are probably getting discrepancies on occasion. And if you don't know how to resolve them, they can take a lot of time to research. But if you utilize the methodology that I teach you today, you should be able to document and resolve every income discrepancy you look at, regardless of its complexity, in about 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to go through the very first case study very slowly because I want everybody to understand why we're taking the steps that we're taking. Income discrepancies are kind of like a chemistry class. If you miss the first day of class, you're not going to understand how day 2's lesson builds on day's 1 lesson. So they're all they're building blocks. So you've got to understand the fundamental concepts before you can throw it together and apply it with an income discrepancy. We're going to go through those fundamental concepts at the beginning of this session. Okay. So what we're going to try and accomplish in the next 2 hours is to talk about breaking down and really dissecting an income discrepancy. I'm going to teach you how EIV thinks, and you're going to realize through this exercise that oftentimes we as humans are far more intelligent than the EIV system. And the EIV system operates in a vacuum, and it operates with some assumptions that aren't true. And the end result of that is it has very limited understanding of the real world. But I'm going to teach you to kind of look at it from EIV's perspective, because then you're going to understand whether or not you've done something wrong on certs, or if EIV is just not as intelligent as we are as humans. I'm going to talk about really how you're going to identify whether a discrepancy is valid or not. Just because you get a discrepancy from EIV doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. And I'm going to help you break that down. I'm going to talk about why there are variances in commonly encountered situations, and really help you understand where EIV is getting these numbers from. And then ultimately, I want you to be able to put this all together and document your files when you get a discrepancy, to where it's clear for somebody who's reviewing that file whether you needed to make cert corrections or if what you did originally on the cert was correct. And that's where the industry struggles with income discrepancies, is sometimes they can look at a discrepancy and the manager knows that they've done all their certs right, but they struggle to tell the story in the tenant file and how to document that what they've done makes sense and that there's nothing that they really need to do. Closing that loop with the documentation in the tenant file is where most properties struggle with income discrepancies. Along with the materials for this session, I actually gave you all blank forms that I want you to use as your working papers as you encounter discrepancies in the future. And the reason I gave you those blank forms is because I don't want you to think that you have to keep the handout for this class pretty and with no scribble on it. I want you to write into the forms that we have in the materials, because you've got clean versions of these forms available to you in your email. So don't use that as an excuse to not participate in this case study. And you're going to do yourself a disservice if you don't try to figure out the income discrepancy as I give you the steps on how to do it. If you just wait for me to show you the answers, you're not going to learn the methodology. So give yourself a chance to learn this, so that next week or 3 months from now, when you encounter a discrepancy, and I'm not here in a webinar walking you through it, you're going to be able to do it independently. Every one of you guys can do it, but this is going to get a little intense at some time, so that's okay. Hang with me and it'll all come together. Okay, so when we talk about EIV income reports, one of the rules that everyone needs to understand between the connection between tracks and EIV is that you're sending your certs through IMAX from your software to tracks. And tracks, once it gets a clean cert in its database, it's going to send that information over to EIV. And it's going to use that information to determine whether there's discrepancies or not. So if EIV does not see the most current cert that you have completed on a residence that's in their tenant file, you are completely wasting your time trying to resolve a discrepancy. So the integrity of EIV is 100% dependent on tracks having your current cert. So before you ever do anything to try and resolve a discrepancy, the very first preliminary step you absolutely have to take is you need to pull out that tenant file and you need to say, okay, this is the most current 5-9 I have executed on this household. Is that the most current cert that's in tracks? And some of you might not be as accustomed to getting into tracks as you should be. So what I want to show you is what the certification query looks like in tracks. So when you are getting ready to try and resolve a discrepancy, you should check and make sure that the most current cert that's listed on this cert query in tracks is going to be the same effective date and cert type as the cert you have on the top of your tenant file. If anyone at the end of this session doesn't think that they have EIV, or if they doesn't think that they have tracks access to their property when they go into secure systems, if you don't see tracks as one of the systems you have access to when you first log in, please email me after this webinar session and I can help you get your tracks access set up so that you can make this critical reconciliation step occur before you start diving into discrepancies in the future. Okay? So if tracks does not have the most current cert you have in the file, you need to get it in there before you print your discrepancies. Otherwise, you're looking at garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. EIV is 100% dependent on tracks. If tracks doesn't have current stuff, EIV is garbage. Okay? That's a really critical thing to understand before we dive into this. Anybody have any questions on understanding the link between tracks, data, and EIV? Okay. All right. So we're going to assume that tracks and your tenant file match on the current cert. There are 3 instances where you must print your income detail and your income discrepancy. The first time you have to print these is when you're starting an annual. All right, so think about what's the very first step you take when you are initiating an annual recertification. What do you send out to that household?
The recert notification.
And how far in advance do you send that out?
The first one's 120 days.
Correct. So as soon as you have sent that first reminder notice to that household, the annual recertification process has begun. Correct? There is nothing in the handbook that says stall and wait 3 months until they come in and interview and then look at their income report in EIV. Don't shoot yourself in the foot and screw yourself out of resolution time. As soon as you have sent that 120-day notice, I want you to print that income report and I want you to print that income discrepancy report. And you always, always, always print them on the same day. Okay? So as soon as you've sent that 120-day notice, print that income report, because if you have issues, you've just given yourself a little bit more time to fix it, because everything has to be fixed by the time you finish your annual. Because you don't want to proceed with an annual that's going to be wrong, right? So you don't have to turn around and do a correction on it. The second time that you have to print the income report and income discrepancy report is every single time you're doing an interim. It doesn't matter when the interim was in relation to the last annual. It doesn't matter if the interim is because you're just adding a child. Every single time you process an interim, you have to print the income report and the income discrepancy report and review them. So again, always print them on the same day in those instances. Now think about it. When you're doing an interim, what kinds of circumstances prompt you to have to do interims?
Increase in income.
Okay. What
or
else?
the number of persons living in the household at that time.
Okay. So you could have an increase or a decrease in income, correct?
Yes.
And you could have a family composition change, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You could also have like a major change in deductions or expenses that could prompt an interim as well, right? What prompts interims are change. Something is changing about the household, okay? I'm planting things in here for a reason. This is all going to come together. It's kind of like I'm laying out the ingredients and we're going to put it together and make a beautiful dessert at the very end. Okay. The third instance where you have to print the income report and the income discrepancy report is 90 days after somebody's moved in or 90 days after you've done an initial certification with them. Maybe they were off of subsidy and they came back on subsidy, okay? So this particular tickler system, the 90 days after you've moved in, you kind of have to track those yourself, right? And put those on your calendar and remember. Why are we tasked with printing an income report and an income discrepancy report 90 days after a move-in? What's the reason behind that? Why wouldn't you look at it before they moved in?
Because they're not going to show up.
Right. You can't see income on your applicants, right? So what's the thought process on reviewing it 3 months after they've moved in? What are you trying to ensure?
That what they said is correct, and you don't have to go back and do another correction on the 5/9s.
Absolutely. If there's something wrong with how they've reported their income on the move-in, isn't it advantageous for everyone to catch that 3 months into tenancy versus 12 months into tenancy when they could potentially owe a lot more money back?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So that's the reason behind looking at it 3 months after the move-ins hit track. All right. So those are the three instances where income reports must be printed: annual, interim, and 90 days after move-in. Show of hands, how many of you all were printing them at other times of the year unnecessarily? Because you thought you had to print them more frequently. Good. Looks like y'all print them at the right time because nobody raised their hand. So either you're really on par with that schedule or you're shy. Okay. So I'm going to assume you guys are printing them at the right time. Any questions on the print frequency before we move to the next critical building block? Okay. The next building block I want to make sure you guys understand is what is EIV recognizable income. EIV is kind of stupid, okay? It's ignorant of the real world. It thinks that the only types of income out there are wages, unemployment, and things from Social Security. It has no idea about all of these other income sources that it does not recognize. Like what? What are those other income sources that EIV doesn't even know exist?
Under the table.
Okay. What'd you say?
Pensions.
Pensions. Child support, general assistance or TANF, right? EIV has no idea that those other kinds of realistic income sources that households can get. All EIV sees, and I'm referring to these as EIV recognizable income sources, are wages, unemployment, and stuff from Social Security and SSI. Okay? So automatically, if someone has some type of income source and you code it wrong on the 5-9, you call it a different category, that right there could trigger you to have a discrepancy. So it's really important that you code pensions as pensions and not Social Security. It's really important that you code child support as child support and not wages, or those categories that don't play nicely together in the land of EIV can almost always trigger you to have a discrepancy if you miscode the income source in terms of the type of income it is. So be cognizant of that. Any questions on what EIV recognizes in terms of income? Okay. When you get an income discrepancy report, it's not because it's Monday afternoon and you've had a rough day. There are triggers for why you get an income discrepancy report. And when you get a discrepancy, it is because the active cert in tracks has a particular income amount on it for EIV recognizable income. So whatever the sum of wages, unemployment, and Social Security are. Whatever that amount is that's on your cert, if EIV sees a different amount of those three types of income, and collectively those two figures vary by $2,400 or more a month, that's the threshold that triggers a discrepancy. What's the significance of the $2,400 a year threshold? Where did HUD come up with that number?
200 or more a month.
Which is the reporting requirement, right? So if it's under a $200 variance between what you're making and what EIV thinks that you're making, HUD says, we're not going to sweat that because the resident's not obligated to report if their income fluctuates under a $200 a month threshold. If it goes above the $200 a month, the lease says that you need to come in and report that change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the background behind that $2,400 threshold. Any questions on the $2,400 threshold? Don't think I'm deliberately glazing over that period of income. We're going to spend a lot of time on period of income. So I know that word is on the screen and you might not understand what that is. Everybody's cool with the $2,400 threshold for right now, right? Okay. All right. Just because you get a discrepancy report does not by default mean you've done something wrong with your cert. It's HUD saying, hey, look at this, because what EIV thinks you should have put on the cert and what you put on the cert varies by at least 2,400. So let's take a look at it. It doesn't automatically mean that there's something wrong. Even if you don't get a discrepancy and you see this little message when you try and search for one, you still have to print this out and put it in the file to document that you checked for a discrepancy. But yippee-ki-yay, when you get this one, you do your little happy dance and you proceed with that cert because you do not have a discrepancy to research. And you're probably thinking to yourself, thank God, I've escaped this one. No discrepancy. This one's going to be quick and easy. Okay? But still print it out to show that you've run it. And we are always going to want you to run this on the same day that you've printed the income detail. If you try and print one week and one the next week, you're going to screw yourself up because there could be additional income sources that appear on the income report. So always print them on the same day. Okay. If you get a discrepancy, as soon as you've printed that report, your clock to fix it has started. And the rule is, by the time you create the cert that you were working on when you had to print this, you need to have the discrepancy figured out by then. All right, so by the time you finish the annual you were doing when you printed the discrepancy, you need to have it figured out. By the time you finish the interim that you were working on when you had to print the discrepancy, you have to have it figured out. It's not a hard and fast 30 days or whichever comes first. It's either or. So 30 days or by the time you finish the cert that you were working on when you had to print it. And the latter is usually the case. The income report and the income discrepancy report that you print when you're working on a new cert needs to be filed with the cert that you're working on when you printed it. Don't file the report on the cert it's based on. Let's just make sure everybody understands what I'm saying there. So if you are working on an upcoming annual and you print the income report and the income discrepancy report, it's that upcoming annual that you're going to put those two reports in, not a historical cert that the discrepancy is based on. Does everybody understand what I'm saying there? Reviewers want to see those filed with the cert that you were processing when you were obligated to print it. Any questions on where to put it in your file? Okay. This is by far the most important screen of this entire webinar that you guys need to make sure you understand the false assumptions that EIV uses for its thought process, because this is really, really critical. And that is, EIV operates under 4 assumptions that are absolutely false in the real world, but EIV has no concept of reality at all. It is a computer program. It is not a human that has, you know, judgment or historical experience or any concept of reality. The very first assumption that EIV has when it's developing discrepancies is it assumes that family composition and income never changes. Well, heck, if that were the case, you guys wouldn't be doing as many interims as you're doing and your lives would be a lot simpler, right? But we know that that is absolutely not realistic. People come, people go, people die, people don't get along and move out. Family composition changes all the time, and incomes change in these households on a regular basis. Whether it's a significant income change or, you know, you might have, you know, those frequent flyers, those people that like to come in every month and do an interim, want to drive you to drink. You know, you might say, I can't finish your May interim and you're already reporting a June interim, and they just, they get a job to lose a job to get a job to lose a job, and you're constantly doing interims on them. Well, that's the reality of the affordable housing population, and EIV doesn't understand that. It assumes that whatever it sees in this finite period of time in the past is the best estimation of what you should have used to project what that household would look like in the future. Okay. The second assumption, and we all can laugh under our breath at this one, is that EIV assumes that all of your residents are perfect little angels, and as soon as you've sent that first reminder notice, they come running into your office with all of their paperwork, and you get their annual done very easily. And they assume that everybody comes in 4 months in advance to do a cert, regardless of whether it's an annual or an interim. That's its mathematical thought process there. Okay, well, that's definitely not true for interims. We rarely know 4 months in advance that we're going to have to do an interim on a household. Okay, but EIV thinks that always occurs. And that's probably the most crucial assumption to remember, because it's the whole reasoning for why periods of income are so historical. And you're going to see why that's the case in just a minute. EIV also assumes that because everybody would respond for the first reminder notice, that as soon as they come running into your office 90 days before the effective date, that everybody's going to have this same like 12-month history or look back period that you guys are going to be using to try and project future income. So everybody, you've got a writing utensil and just a little scratch pad of paper. Let's do an example here just to illustrate this. So let's pretend that it is April 1st of 2018. So write down that date. And on April the 1st of 2018, you would be sending out recertification notices for what cert? What type of annual, or when would the annuals be due?
July 1st.
So if you're doing April 1st of 18,
August.
you're sending 120-day notices out for what month annual?
August 1st.
August, right? Okay. So EIV assumes that you're gearing up for your August 2018 annual. And it thinks, okay, you're going to send these notices for 1/18. And because we live in a flower garden world, EIV is just going to assume that by May 1 of 18, every single person is lined up at your office to do their interview. And if they all came in on May 1 of 18, what's the 12-month historical time frame from that date going back? What's the 12-month period prior to 5/1/18?
4/30/17.
What's the 12-month period? What's the 12-month period prior to May 1/18? Is it May 1/17 through April 30th, 18? Right? This is the normal point where people start to get confused. Do not get frustrated. Stay with me here. If you have everybody that were to come into your office on May 1st of 2018 to do their August annual, and you were looking back at their circumstances for the prior 12 months, that 12-month period would be May 1/17 through April 30th, 18. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This is what EIV thinks happens every single time, and it doesn't happen that way. Okay. Sandra, I see your hand is raised. Did you still have a question, hon? Okay, I'm going to put your hand down then. Okay. This is what EIV thinks happens all the time, regardless of what time of search you're looking at. And if you look at the months here, it's going to make sense, this formula that I'm going to give you, that's going to apply to every single discrepancy. And that is the period of income that EIV is looking at when it thinks you're creating a cert always starts 15 months prior to the effective date and runs for a 12-month period. Some of you guys might be like, whoa, I don't know what you're talking about, Jenny. I'm going to show you. The period, let me just repeat what the formula is. Period of income always equals the 12-month time frame that started 15 months before the cert and it ran for a 12-month period. And that's what I'm trying to illustrate for you with these August certs. If you had an August 2018 cert that was discrepant, EIV always thought that you would have been looking back to 5/1/17 through 4/30/18. That would be your period of income. So does that ring true? Is 5/1/17 through 4/30/18, does that start 15 months prior to 8/1/18?
Yes.
And does it run for a 12-month period? This is where we need to stop when people get confused, because I want you to understand this concept. On that math that we were just jotting down on our scratch pad, remember we were doing August 1 annual, August 1/18. So let's pretend that's the cert that we're going to get a discrepancy on later. An 8/1/18 annual. Write that down, 8/1/18 annual. If you rewind 15 months prior to 8/1/18, what do you get? What's 15 months before 8/1/18?
(5/1/17).
Right. And then you run it for a 12-month period, and it ends 4/30/18. That is the period of income any time you have an August 1 cert that's discrepant. It works every single time. The formula is never off. It's always going to rewind from the effective date of the discrepant cert, the cert that EIV thinks that you've made the error on. You're always going to rewind the clock 15 months and run it for a 12-month time frame, and that's always going to be the period of income. Period of income is the time frame EIV is looking at and saying, well, this is what they were earning during this period. This is what you should have put on this cert. All because of these false assumptions EIV has, and it's lacking the concept of reality. Okay, so for those of you that are visual learners, you need to see this visually, okay? And I'm going to help you do the conversion to quarters here in just a second. So this is what I want you to look at. I want you to go to page 5 of your material. And I want you to see that period of income conversion chart. I've outlined for you, if you read across the rows, what's going to show is anytime you have a discrepancy on a January 1 cert, your period of income is always going to be 15 months prior, which is October 1, and it's always going to run for a 12-month period ending September 30th. So completely forget about the column on the far right of this chart for right now. We're going to just focus on looking at the two on the left. Does everyone see how that formula rings true for every month of the year based on how I've got that middle column written out?
Yes.
Regardless of what month you take, let's take May. You rewind 15 months of May of this of a given year, and you're going to end up with February of the prior year. And you run February for a 12-month time frame, and you end up January 31st of the next year. Okay, so we're completely not looking at this column right now. Show of hands, how many of you are understanding the concept of applying that 15 months prior running for a 12-month period? How many of you guys understand how to apply that formula for right now, just for any given month of the year? Raise your hand on the dashboard. I can't read your faces. I can't see if there's deer in the headlights through a webinar. So I want you guys to be honest with me and raise your hand if you're getting this. If you're not, don't lose me. You're going to have an aha moment on why we're spending so much time on this. You're like, good grief, Jenny, I thought we were talking about discrepancies. This is key to the discrepancy. I'm just showing you guys the backbone of it for right now. You're not supposed to really understand how this is all coming together yet, so don't get frustrated. Okay, let's let that marinate for just a minute. When you are looking at income reports, what pay frequency are wages displayed in on an income report?
Quarterly.
Quarterly. When you look at unemployment on an income report, what pay frequency is unemployment listed as? How are unemployment wages listed on an income report? Quarterly, weekly, monthly, yearly? What's the pay frequency for unemployment on an EIV income report? You guys might not have seen that much unemployment at your pracs. It's quarterly, okay? So wages display quarterly values. Unemployment displays quarterly values. What pay frequency does Social Security Administration income display on the income report?
Monthly?
Monthly. Absolutely. It's a monthly benefit, right? So how would you convert those months to quarters? What would you do to the monthly amount to get it a quarterly amount? If you knew somebody made $500 a month in Social Security, what would they make in a given quarter for Social Security?
Just multiply it by 3.
Right, 3 months and a quarter, right? So we can say that for all of the EIV income sources that EIV sees, wages, unemployment, and Social Security Administration, we can pretty easily get those all into quarterly values, right? The wages and unemployment, that's easy. The monthly benefits, we would just know it's 3 months, right? Because of that, we want to not think about our periods of income as date ranges. We want to think about them as quarterly ranges. So on this period of income conversion chart, do you all see that? Let's look at this very first row. October 1 through September 30th of the next year. Do you all see that that's really the same thing as quarter 4 through quarter 3 of the next year? Would you agree?
Yes.
What are the months? How many quarters are there in a year?
4,
And how many months are in a quarter?
3.
3. Okay. So October 1 is the start of quarter 4 of a year, right? And then you get all of quarter 1, all of quarter 2, and all the way to the end of quarter 3, and that's where you land at September 30th, correct? I don't see if you're nodding your head, so you got to say yes. Y'all got to verbalize with me so that I know you're following me there. Okay, so when the start and the end of the period of income align perfectly with the quarters of the calendar year, I call that clean quarters. So our clean quarters ranges start in October, January, April, and July, because those are all the starts of the quarters of the calendar year. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yes. These are what we're going to call clean quarterly ranges. So you can write out to the side here, this row for January is clean, this row for April is clean, this row for July is clean, and this row for October is clean. Whenever these periods of income don't align perfectly with the start or the end of a quarter, I call these dirty quarters. And I call them dirty because the math is a little different. And you look at this example for February, it's a dirty quarter. February is not, actually, the February line, okay, so your period of income is November through October. You subtract 15 months from February and you get November. You run it for a 12-month period. You end up at the end of October. November is not the start of a calendar quarter, right? It is the second of 3 months of quarter 4. All of quarter 1, all of quarter 2, all of quarter 3, and then only the first of 3 months of quarter 4. So these clean quarters always have kind of these bookends of either 2/3 ending in 1/3 or 1/3 ending in 2/3. So if you look at March, subtract 15 months, you get December, run it for a 12-month period. It ends in November. December is the last of 3 quarters of quarter 4. All of quarter 1, all of quarter 2, all of quarter 3, and then only the first 2 months, October and November of quarter 4. Everybody following me how I'm converting these month ranges to quarterly ranges? If you understand how to convert these month ranges to quarterly ranges, please raise your hand on the dashboard. Okay. You're going to use this conversion chart all of the time when you're looking at discrepancies. And you're going to get to the point where you've got these memorized, where you're converting from the months to the quarterly ranges is just going to come naturally for you. But the reason we're wanting to look at things in quarters is because it helps us know where EIV is looking on the income report when it's gathering up what it thinks we should have put on a 5.9 versus what we actually put on a 5.9. Okay? Okay. So I know it seems like this is kind of disjointed and that I've talked about all these concepts and assumptions and periods of time and stuff, and you don't really know how this is all going to come together. I want to show you by looking at a discrepancy why all of these concepts are so important. Okay? Take a deep breath. You might feel like you're not following this. You're getting more of this than what you think you are. I have given you the blank forms of the working papers in the email yesterday. So I want you guys to scribble on the ones that I've given you in the handout today, because this is how you're going to understand the math on discrepancy. Let's look at our first discrepancy. Okay. Okay. Let's pretend that you're the manager and you're getting ready to do a May 2018 interim on the Jenny De Silva household. Okay. And you're the manager for Prairie Dog Apartments. Okay. And here's our first example of a blown assumption here. We are gearing up to do an interim roughly 24 days before the interim needs to be effective, right? So we're sure not starting this process 4 months in advance, right? But EIV thinks that we are going to, okay? So when you look at this discrepancy that you've printed as you're getting ready to do my May 2018 interim, the most current cert that's in the track system and the most current cert that's in my tenant file, when you open up my tenant file, is a 12/1/17 cert. What type of cert is that? Is it an annual? Is it an interim? Is it a move-in? You can tell there's something else in the row right below it that tells you what it's not. Okay? If the cert that's discrepant is effective 12/1/17, what type of cert do you guys think that is?
An IR.
And how do you know it's an IR?
Because I looked on the page behind it. It said most recent type of action.
Also, you can tell I get recertified in October of every year. So a 12/1/17 cert can't be my annual, right? This is an interim, all right? Why do you do interims?
Change in the income or household.
Right. Keep that in mind. That's critical, okay? So the cert that EIV thinks that you as managers have made an error on is a 12/1/17 interim. Apply your formula here and rewind 15 months back from 12/1/17. And what do you get?
September the 1st, 16 through August 31st of 17.
Right. See here, she's getting 12/1/17 is the discrepant cert. You're going to rewind 15 months back from that date, and you get 9/1/16, and you're going to run it for a 12-month period to 8/31/17. That is your period of income. That is the time frame that EIV is looking at and saying, whatever Jenny De Silva earned in this time frame should have been what we put on this 12/1/17 interim, because nothing ever changes in the world of EIV. Okay, does this ring true with your conversion chart that I gave you? Look at
Yes.
the row for December. Read across to from left to right. It goes from December, your period of income is always 9/1 through August 31. So I want you guys to go ahead and convert this 9/1/16 through 8/31/17, convert that to a quarterly range. Right here on this form, and tell me what you get.
One-third of quarter 3 for 2/3 of quarter 3.
Everybody get that? Because September is the last month of quarter 3, right? So it's 1/3 quarter 3 of 16, running all the way through 2/3 quarter 3 of 17. Correct? Everybody got that quarterly range? EIV thinks that you should have put 12/3009 on this cert. And that's because that's how much income it sees in this period of income. So it's looking at the income detail report and it's saying from 9/1/16 through 8/31/17, Jenny De Silva earned $12,309 in EIV recognizable income. So that's the sum of wages, unemployment, and Social Security that showed on the income report. If that's what she earned in that period of income, that's what she should have put on the cert in accordance with EIV. What did we put on that cert? How much income did we put on that 12/1/17 cert? Zero. The zero that you see right here under projected annual wages and benefits from the 5/9, that's telling you this is the sum of EIV recognizable income on that 12/1/17 interim. So that's the sum of the wages, unemployment, and Social Security that was on that 5/9. It's zero. Does that mean I had no income on that 12/1/17 interim? Or are there other types of income that I might have had that EIV doesn't even see? This is just the sum of EIV recognizable income. It's not, this is not something that means I claimed zero income. It could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean. I could have had child support, TANF, family contributions, pensions, or something on there. EIV doesn't see that in this total. All it sees is the sum of EIV recognizable income, which is wages, unemployment, and Social Security. Well, let's check our threshold. The difference between what we put on the 5/9 for EIV income, which is zero, and what EIV thinks that we should have put in income, which is $12,309. The difference between that is $12,309. That's way more than what's our threshold for a discrepancy again. Whoops, sorry. What's the difference? What's the max, or what's the dollar amount that has to hit as the threshold for us to get a discrepancy?
2,400.
That's way more than 2,400. That's why we're getting a discrepancy here. The name of the game is to say, where did EIV get this 12,309 by looking at this time frame, And once we've established where EIV came up with the 12,309, can we document and provide an explanation for why we didn't put that? Can we show that we're smarter than EIV? That's what you're trying to accomplish when you're resolving discrepancies. EIV thinks we should have put 12,309. Let's find out where it got that 12,309. And then if we can explain why we did something different, we can document the file that we're human, we have a concept of reality, and we're smarter than EIV. Okay? The next step that I want you guys to take is I want you to look at the income report. But as you're looking at the income report, which is on page 7 of your materials, in the margin, I want you to go ahead and jot down what your quarterly range is for your period of income again. Remember, we decided that it was 1/3 quarter 3 of 16 through 2/3 quarter 3 of 17. So write down that quarterly range right here on this income report. The quarters of that quarterly range, I want you guys to draw a box that encompasses those quarters on any type of income that Jenny De Silva has on her income report. So let's first establish what types of income does Jenny have on her income report? What type of income does Jenny have on her income report?
Wages.
Regular wages.
Does she have unemployment? It's really hard to read on the screen, so feel free to look at your page 7 of your handout because it's printed a lot better. Jenny has wages, right?
Yes.
Does Jenny have unemployment?
No.
Flip the page over to page 8. Does Jenny have anything from Social Security or SSI?
No.
No.
No. So all we're dealing with is wages here, okay? I want you to draw a box around the quarters in the wage section that encompass your quarterly range. So you're going to actually, remember our quarterly range is what? Somebody tell me what the quarterly range is.
1/3 of quarter 3 of 16 to 2/3 quarter 3 of 17.
Okay. So I want you to start the bottom of your box at quarter 3 of 16. And I want you to draw a box all the way up to quarter 3 of 17. So your box should start here with quarter 3 of 16 and end with quarter 3 of 17. And I just want you to draw a box around these income sources because that's your period of income. That's the only period of income that EIV is paying any attention to. It doesn't care or recognize or pay attention to what Jenny earned prior to that period of income, and she doesn't care, and it doesn't care what she earned after the period of income. I want you to force your eyes to only look at the period of income that EIV sees, and it's in that boxed time frame. Okay? We don't care what happened before, we don't care what happened after. During that quarterly range, how many income sources for wages did Jenny have? How many different income sources are in your box?
4.
4. We want to look at all 4 of those separately. Okay? The 4 income sources are Hammer and Williams, Supported Communities, Fairway Fellowship, and Major County Senior Citizens, right? Those are the 4 different wage sources that showed up in that period of income. For every income source that's in our boxed range, we're going to do a little table. And the little tables that I want you to use are after your income report in your handout. It's called the EIV Period of Income Analysis. And it looks like this is just a blow-up shot of it. So look for the form that says EIV Period of Income Analysis. And you're going to notice that on those next 2 pages, there are 4 charts for you to complete. And those are a chart for every income source. And this is probably where, under your breath, you're saying, if Jenny thinks that I have time to do this every time I have a discrepancy, she's crazy. And I'm telling you that the pace that we're going through this right now is because this is a learning process. If you use this methodology, you will be able to do this very, very quickly with practice. What I want you to do with each of your 4 tables is I want you to write our quarterly range bottom up. Now, that is unnatural of that as that is for me, and it probably is for you. Why am I going to have you write the quarterly range bottom up? Because that's the way it displays on the income report. You're like, I don't know, Jenny, I think you're losing your brain. No, it's the reason you're writing it bottom up is because that's the way it displays on the income report. The quarterly ranges go from most historical on the bottom to most recent on the top. All right. So for every income source, we're going to write our quarterly range on a table bottom up. So here's our quarterly range: 1/3 quarter 3, all the way up to 2/3 quarter 3. And the very first income source that we're going to pay attention to is Hammer Williams. So our very first table is going to be for Hammer Williams. So go ahead and write that quarterly range bottom up on that top table and put your income source as Hammer Williams. After you've done that, you're going to look at your income report in that box that you're training your eyes to only look at and examine what did Jenny earn from Hammer Williams in quarter 3 of 16? How much did she earn from Hammer Williams in quarter 3 of 16? Look at your income report and somebody tell me.
39.44.
39.44 is right. Okay, so we're going to take 1/3 of that. We're going to take 1/3 of 39.44 because we're only taking one of the 3 months of that quarter. Okay? What did she earn from Hammer Williams in quarter 4 of 16?
$1,542.
$1,542. No fractions on those ones in the middle. What did she earn from Hammer Williams in quarter 1 of 17?
$2,245.
$2,245. What did she earn in quarter 2 of 17 from Hammer Williams?
Nothing.
Nothing. You put 0. She didn't earn anything from, remember, we're isolating each income source on the table for good reason that you'll appreciate here in about 20 minutes. Okay. What did she earn in quarter 3 of 17 from Hammer Williams?
0.
All right, so you're going to take 2/3 of 0, which is 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I want you guys to add up all of those quarterly amounts and tell me what she earned from Hammer Williams during our quarterly range, which is our period of income.
$5,101.66.
Más o menos on the rounding. You and I just rounded different. Don't sweat that. That's not going to impact the concept here, okay? So yes. So collectively through that quarterly range from Hammer Williams, Jenny earned $5,101.67 or 66 cents, whatever you want to do. Okay? We're done with our first table. Remember, how many income sources did we have in our quarterly range?
4.
4. So we're 1 down, 3 to go. All right? On your bottom table, you're going to repeat this exact same process for your second income source. So this, is everybody done with the calculations for Hammer Williams? Let me stop here and see. Did anybody not get the 5,101.67? Raise your hand if you didn't get that same income amount. Okay, so let's move to our next income source. Our next income source, we're going to do supported community. Exact same format on your table. You're going to write your quarterly range bottom up. Once you've written that quarterly range bottom up, someone tell me, what did Jenny earn from supported community in quarter 3 of 16?
0.
Very good. What about quarter 4 of 16?
3,566.
Very good. Quarter 1 of 17?
0.
Quarter 2 of 17?
0.
quarter 3 of 17?
0.
Can you guys tell just when you're isolating these income sources? Tell me what do you think happened either at the end of quarter 4 of 16 or at the beginning of quarter 1 of 17? What happened?
That's when she changed jobs?
Yes. You can see when the wages drop off that's a big hint that source of wages stopped, right? It's because that employment got terminated. Okay? So what's the total amount of wages that Jenny earned in this period of income from supported community?
3566.
3566. Everybody still with us on this second chart? Okay. Third chart on the next page over. Let's take our next income source of Fairway Fellowship. Do the exact same thing. You guys can appreciate now why I had you draw that box around the period of income, because it helps you train your eyes to only look at these time frames for these income sources. Again, we don't care what happened outside of the boundaries of our box that we drew. When you guys think you have the total for Fairway Fellowship, I want you guys to raise your hand and keep it up so that I'll know you're done with this table. Pay attention to which months do and which months do not have fractions for you to use in your multiplication. All right, so Sandra, tell me what you got for Fairview Fellowship. Are you there, Sandra? Okay, Kathy, moving on. Kathy, what did you get? Unmute your line. Tell me what you got.
I don't think I did the fractions right. 4,842.
All right, so let's check our math and see. She didn't earn anything in Q3 of 16 from Fairview. Nothing from Q4. Nothing in Q1. $304 in Q2. And $45.38 in Q3, but we're going to only take 2/3 of that.
Right.
Does everybody see how I got 33.29.33?
Yes.
If you didn't originally get that, do you see where you made an error in your math?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're 3 boxes down, 1 to go. The last table that we're going to look at and complete on this page is for major county senior citizens. So bottom up on your quarterly range. And do your calculations for major county. And tell me what you get when you're done.
308.
Because it's only in 1 month, right? 1 month of that quarterly range, right? So we had zeros, except for in Q2, she earned 308. Did everybody get 308? Okay. Okay. We're done with our 4 tables. Now I want you to add up the totals from all 4 tables and put them in this box that's on the bottom of your page that says total household income per your period of income analysis worksheet. Add up all of these table totals and tell me what you get.
12,305.
So the totals from all 4 tables added up, you're correct, it's 12,305. What was the number that we were originally trying to reconcile to on the discrepancy report?
12,309.30.
Very good. Here's the final plug of this methodology, and that is that when you have dirty quarters, did we have dirty quarters in this scenario?
Yes.
Right, because we were having our fractions, not clean quarters, dirty quarters. When you have dirty quarters, you're never going to be able to reconcile exactly to that actual amount because you don't know that the wages earned over the course of a quarter were evenly distributed between the 3 months, but you're going to come real close. Okay? When you are dealing with clean quarters, you should be able to reconcile to that actual amount perfectly because you don't have to use any fractions. So here we've got dirty quarters, close counts. Are we close here? And when I say close, it's usually within $50. Are we close within $50?
Yes.
Yes. So we now know what EIV was seeing during this period of income as income, and that's why it thinks you should have put the 12,309.30. So are we done? Not quite. We're not quite done yet, okay? We know where EIV got their number from. The final step in the process is for us to substantiate why we did what we did and either determine whether we were correct and EIV was wrong, or if EIV was correct and we've got some corrections to do. So the final step is closing the loop on this, and I've given you a form to do that, and it's called the EIV Income Discrepancy Resolution Form, and it's the next page of your handout. What this report is showing for you is it's going to help you explain why you did what you did and whether EIV was right or if you were right. Okay, so here's a little excerpt from that form. Each row of this table is going to be populated using what you came up with in your tables. So remember, we had 4 tables. We're going to have 4 rows. The first row, Jenny De Silva. Why do we have a column for whether somebody is a student or a dependent? Why would it be critical to know if somebody was a student or a dependent in the household? Why would that be important? Is it because maybe there's certain rules on how you treat income for students and dependents? Do you think EIV understands all of those unique rules? No. EIV has no concept of student or dependent income caps that they apply. Okay, so that's why if you have a student or a dependent that's earning income and you have a discrepancy, that's a huge hint for you that that's what's causing it, and it would be invalid. But in this case, we don't have a student or a dependent. Jenny is the only person in the head of household. Okay, so she's not a student. The very first income source that we're going to look at is Hammer Williams. What was our table total for Hammer Williams?
5101.67.
Right. What amount of wage income from Hammer Williams was on the discrepant 5.9? Look back at that discrepancy page.
Right?
Say that again?
It's 0 for everything, right?
Correct, because remember, there was no EIV recognizable income on that 12/1/17 IR. On the projected annual wages and benefits row, it says 0. That means that's the sum of EIV income. It shows 0. None of these had income, right? So the income reported on this source on the discrepant 5.9 would be 0. Well, let's look at that. Look at your Hammer Williams table again, okay? Can you see if that income source dropped off before the period of income ended?
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think probably happened with her job at Hammer Williams?
She quit?
She quit or she got fired, right? Does that explain why on the current cert that you did for 12/1/17, you didn't put Hammer Williams?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. EIV is looking back at this historical time frame that is incredibly outdated, right? Think about what your period of income is here. It's going all the way back to Q3 of 16 and it's ending Q3 of 17. The discrepant cert that you're looking at is a 12/1/17 cert. You see how these assumptions all play into this? Why are you doing a 12/1/17 interim in the first place? What prompts interims? Change.
Loss of income.
Right? Change, right? It's obvious that the Hammer Williams income stopped because it didn't even last through the period of income. She stopped working at Hammer Williams. That's why you're not putting it on the discrepant 5/9. You know more about current circumstances than what EIV is looking at. EIV is looking at a historical time frame that is not representative of current circumstances. So when you have this row of completed fields here, the name of the game is to put a explanation code in this last column that explains why you didn't put that income source on the cert that's discrepant. So look at those reasons in that legend. There's 12 of them listed there. The invalid discrepancy code legend. Which one of those reasons explains why you did not put Hammer Williams on a 12/1/17 interim?
Would it be number 4?
Absolutely. This is an income termination that EIV didn't know about at the time of the period income that has since been third-party verified. We're just going to assume we're not going to, I didn't show all these income verifications, but let's just assume that all these terminations got verified, okay? So you have it in the file. You know why you're not putting Hammer Williams on a 12/1/17 interim. Jenny doesn't work there anymore. EIV doesn't know that. Remember, EIV thinks. Remember that very first set of assumptions. It says, whatever happened historically is a perfect representation of what's going to happen in the future, according to EIV. You can see how stupid EIV kind of is, right? It doesn't understand reality. 4 sources. We're going to do 4 rows. Let's do our second row. Jenny was supported community. What was the total we had for supported community in our table?
3566.
Remember, we saw what happened with supported community? Did that income source drop off before the period of income even ended?
Mm-hmm.
What amount of supported community income did you put on the 12/1 interim?
0.
And why didn't you put it on there?
It was after the termination date.
She didn't work there anymore. You're just smarter than EIV. Don't let EIV make you question your own sense of reality, because EIV doesn't have any, okay? It automatically, when you get a discrepancy, if you don't understand what created it, you have a tendency to think, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? I don't know what I did wrong on this cert. Well, in this one, you didn't do anything wrong, okay? Let's look at the third box, the third table we did for Fairview Fellowship. What was your table total there?
3329.33.
None of it showed on that 12/1 interim, right? Same reason. All of these income sources terminated before the end of the period of income. You already have, in a perfect world, these termination verifications in the file. You've been doing interims on Jenny all this time for all of these jobs that she gotten lost. Jenny's in your office all the time, right? Final box was major county. What's unique about the major county income? She worked there very long?
Maybe one paycheck?
Yeah. Over the course of 3 months, she cumulatively only earned $308 in income. Would she have even have been obligated to have reported that?
No.
No. 308 over the course of 3 months. Likely there wasn't any given month where she would have increased her income by 200 or more a month. She wasn't even obligated to report that to you. But she also didn't like working for major county. That's why she only earned 308. She quit that job too. You already got that verification of termination. If at the end of the game, you have an explanation in this last column that says why you did what you did, this discrepancy is not valid. You did nothing wrong. There's no correction needed. If there were to have been an income source here where you had no explanation why you weren't still putting it on the 5-9, it would be really obvious. And in those cases, you would probably have a undisclosed income source and you would know that this is a valid discrepancy and you're now seeing income that needed to have been on historical certs. But that's not the case with this one. So just because there were 4 income sources in this period of income, they all dropped off way before you did a 12/1/17 interim. You're smarter than HUD. You're smarter than EIV, and you know more about the current circumstances. EIV is stuck in a vacuum back in that period of income that's not representative of current circumstances. This is what you put in your file to show this is an invalid discrepancy. Now, we went through that slow and methodically. Most of your discrepancies, for one, aren't going to have 4 different income sources involved. And the more you practice using these forms, the quicker you'll resolve the discrepancy. But the methodology works whether you have 1 person in the household or 4 people in the household. And it works whether you have a single income source or 8 income sources. The method works every time. I've used this for probably about 5 years now, this particular methodology for about 5 years now. And I can resolve this type of discrepancy just because I've practiced it. I can resolve this kind of discrepancy in about 5 minutes. And you will too. We went through it and built up for it, and I showed you why these concepts were important. But once you practice this and use these forms over and over again, it becomes really apparent very early on whether you've got a discrepancy, and it's easy to document. Show of hands. Assuming most of you guys were kind of like, gosh, where is she going with this at the beginning? For how many of you did this all kind of come together at the end and the case study illustrated the concepts for you? Good. And I think based on the responses I see from the group, it looks like most of you guys had that aha moment and you understood why it was important to talk about those random assumptions and concepts at the beginning because they all played into this. And this was a standard discrepancy that I pulled 3 or 4 days ago from one of my monthly services clients, but I look at their discrepancies every month. And this was, obviously, I changed it to be my own name, but all of this was, I pulled this out of an actual discrepancy in EIV and just redacted the personal information. But this is a standard kind of thing you see. And now you guys have a method to resolve it, and it'll work every single time. Okay. Who has questions? Because we've, surprisingly, for this type of a discrepancy, I don't always end early, but we've got 20 minutes. Who's got questions? Now's your chance to pepper me with questions.
Jenny, if it's under the 2,400, there's no need to fool with this, though, right?
If it's under 2,400 for the total variance, you wouldn't have gotten a discrepancy report anyway.
Okay.
If an individual income source is under 2,400, it may make it invalid. But remember, if the total on the actuals column of that discrepancy, if that doesn't prompt the $2,400 threshold, you're not even going to get a discrepancy. You're going to get that sweet one that says no discrepancy for this household.
Okay.
Okay. What other kinds of questions do you guys have? Do you understand the reasons on the legend code? I know in this case we only used 4 because that was what was applicable. But if it's truly an invalid discrepancy, your reason should be in that list of 12 reasons. I have yet to find an invalid one where it wasn't in the list. And don't overuse 12 as other, because that would be something that's really isolated and a real unique curveball. Don't assume everything is other, because that should be used sparingly. What are your thoughts on this? I know you guys think, good grief, Jenny, that took us 45 minutes to go through the case study. But do you guys think that you could repeat this process and apply this on a discrepancy on your own?
Yes.
Because I'm going to want you to do that over the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so that we have between now and our final webinar. Our final webinar, we're going to jump straight into case studies, and I'm going to test whether you guys have mastered this concept or not. I'm not going to do all the build-up and the explanation on how to convert months to quarters and all that. We're going to jump straight into case studies in our final webinar. So you guys have a few weeks to kind of practice with this, any kind of discrepancy that you have. If you don't have any discrepancies at your property, ask Les if you can borrow one from, Jessica might have some because she's got, family property or a project-based Section 8. She might have more working households. Divvy them up, get some exposure, practice it on at least 1 or 2 in the next couple of weeks. And it's totally different if you can do it on your own versus me guiding you through it. If you can do it on your own, you've truly mastered the concept, but you're going to have to practice it. Okay?
That you gave us, it shows that we put these in with the tenant files and all that once we have figured out that they're not discrepancies. Do we use with your Blueprint Housing Solutions, or do we need to take those things off?
Oh no, you can use it with that. I don't care.
Okay, I didn't know if.
Yeah, no. That's you're a client for me. You can use things with my logo on it. Then notice we didn't touch on it in this case study because this case study ended up being invalid, but let's say you had one where you legitimately had a valid discrepancy that you have to fix. There's a final form in your handout that says the discrepancy action plan. That would be the form that you complete to document that you've gone out and sought the additional third party, you made the corrections to the certs, you maybe executed a repayment agreement. We didn't have to use that in this scenario, but that form is available for you as well in the event you actually have a legitimate valid discrepancy. Feel free to use that. Okay. Any other questions? Don't hang up yet because I got a favor to ask. Okay. So you guys have had to listen to me for 4 hours a day today. Hopefully you found this to be good use of your time, and I hope you picked up some stuff in these 2 webinars. But this is your chance to grade me. There is an evaluation form that I emailed you yesterday. If you honestly assess whether you liked this teaching style, whether you followed how I taught the class, whether you liked the materials, whether you thought Jenny talked too much, whatever you want to say, you can be as honest and as constructive as you want to be on that evaluation form. If you guys send those back to me, I will give you certificates of completion for this series so that you can document that you've undergone EIV training. So I'm only going to give you a training certificate if you give me a grade. And I am very receptive, and I do not get offended if you say, Jenny, I totally didn't understand how you did this or whatever. Be honest, because I use those comments to tweak my trainings for the next group. So tell me what you thought. I want to know that these are effective ways of just illustrating what's a pretty complex concept. So be honest and email those to me after you scan them, and email them to me after you have filled them out, and I will get you a certificate. Okay? 15 minutes to spare. Anybody have any questions? All righty. Well, I appreciate you guys participating and being interactive with me. I look forward to our 3rd installment here in a few weeks. But I hope each of you guys have a good rest of the day, good rest of the week, and a good weekend. Talk to you soon.